Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's program. I'm excited. Today, we've got Mr. Mark Salloum with us. Mark has been in business for over 24 and a half years, and he is president and founder of Highway Media and a separate company, Rockit Digital Marketing. So, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Good. Hey, thanks, Tom. I appreciate you having me on the program here. So what I'm going to do is basically just give you a little background on myself and my history. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and first open up this PowerPoint slide presentation so that I don't forget anything. Right, very good. So first and foremost, I'll give you a little background on myself here. Again, I've been in business since 1997. And when I originally got into the business, I was a wedding and event producer. Back at that point, I really knew that at some point I wanted to transition and evolve into other things. And slowly by 2007, we had recognized enough corporate business to say that, hey, we are a full service company, meaning we can do the event side and we can do the corporate commercial side. In fact, we were one of the very few companies around the country to not only master both, but win awards in both sides. So we were really very proud of that. But by 2012, I also recognized that there was going to be a need to separate the two. So the original company, the wedding company, was named Video Magic Productions, and inevitably I recognized that I should have a different name so that I could market them uniquely. So we did that in 2012, and by that point, a big portion of our business, regardless, was already in the corporate and commercial side. And we also named it Highway Media, recognizing that we wanted to go beyond just video production. So what we did was included photography, graphic design, and inevitably, we started to recognize a lot of our clients were looking for additional services, which meant, what else can we do with our videos? So we recognized that distributing the content was just as important as creating it. And then we eventually created a company called Rockit Digital Marketing in 2017. And I added a partner to that business, recognizing it would be a little too much to try to take on with Highway Media alone. And also realizing that I wasn't an expert when it came to the technical side and running the campaigns. So that's what we did with Rockit Digital. And now we are really recognized as a specialized full service digital agency. So we are now using, and the unique thing about my background though too, is that I have degrees in both film production as well as marketing and advertising. So I'm one of those few characters in the world that not only utilizes a degree, but both of my degrees in fields of work. So, and yeah, just to conclude my background, I'd like to at least say that, my idea here today is to really provide my thoughts on, helping small businesses grow, and that, what we're going to talk about today is not an end all to a successful company, but just, my umbrella view and what I thought has been successful. And finally, I'll say too that I've actually spoken at several conferences about this very topic.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to hearing from you, Mark.
Thank you. All right, very good. So any questions, or do you want me to move forward, Tom?
I'll move right ahead, and I'll probably ask a couple of questions as we go, but I'm ready to just go ahead and get right into it.
Great. All right. Well, first, I just thought I would point out some small business facts that are pretty startling to some people, but others recognize it. The fact that the failure startup rate is 90%. Most small businesses do not succeed, and there are a lot of reasons behind it. So I'm just trying to give a quick synopsis of a few points here. 20% of businesses are usually out by the end of the first year, 50% out within 5 years, and 33% barely survive 10 plus years. And those reasons for failure include a number of things, but a few important ones are, the financial hurdles, which might include capital to start up, potential capital as the year or two are going down the road. Another one would be ineffective business planning, really understanding a whole lot about your market, your target audience, etc. And of course, marketing mishaps, that might be a tie in there as well, but needing to understand that a little bit better. And we're going to talk about those things here shortly. And then finally, poor management. That's another topic that we're going to talk about today as well. One of these four areas are typically considered one of the key areas, whereas most businesses fail when that. So, and financial hurdles might be the biggest obstacle and it would require its own session. So we're not going to focus on that. We're going to really focus on 3 keys to starting and thriving a small business. Okay.
Sounds good. Yes. Mhm.
Great. All right. So moving on here, let me move this so I can see my screen here a little better. So the 3 keys that I look at are this. First, you want to make sure that you've got a unique product or service. Okay. And you want to make sure that when I say unique, it should be either a product that is maybe on the market, but maybe you've got something different about it that you're going to offer. You might also want to make sure that you are an expert in what you're offering. For example, I might not want to start a hair salon if I don't know how to cut hair or to give a beautiful look to a nice male or female as they come into my shop. But knowing that I have people that might be able to help me could be a consideration, certainly. But make sure that you're an expert in what you're going to offer, and certainly that you've got something unique to that marketplace. Secondly, we're going to talk about promoting your product and service. And third, we're going to talk about managing the business. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
All right. So moving on, the unique and expert offering. So first and foremost, I always tell companies, if they're looking to start up, we have a lot of companies, I should say, too, reaching out to us saying, hey, listen, we are kind of new in the business and we're looking to try to grow or try to recognize what we can do to grow. Do you have some advice? All right.
Mm-hmm.
And first thing, that you might be considering, hopefully before you've even started that business, is there a demand for your product or service in your market? Something that might sell well here may not sell well in Phoenix, Arizona. You might be selling sleds, but you've got to understand that could be regional or, state by state that you might be considering, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So consider the product or the service even that you're offering. And second, is your product or service unique enough or great enough to initiate demand for your offerings? And what I'm really implying here is that, again, back to the hair salon, there are in our area hair salons, it seems like every half mile. There might be 10 in a 2-mile stretch, right? So the bottom line is that if you're going to offer a service like that, is there enough demand to initiate what you're doing, or is your product or service unique enough to warrant that demand in your market? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next, are you an expert in your offerings? And if not, do you have some kind of a support system? Obviously, if you're going into a franchise, that's different because you often will get great support. That's what you're paying for with a franchise. But if you were to say, hey, I want to start a dance company because I recognize dance studios are very profitable. Well, if you don't, understand the dance market and how to attract them and how to operate that business and how to hire and to train instructors, then you're going to probably struggle with that. Right. But if you're an expert accountant or you're an artist in some way, shape, or form, or you're selling, let's say, parts for a phone, cell phone products have become very, very big. You want to make sure that you've got something that people are going to have interest in, and that you've got enough expert knowledge about, and that you can always expand what you're knowing too. So that was my last point here. What are you doing to advance your skills and or your offerings? Are there certifications necessary? Is there an expansion of the market or the product line that you need to consider for the future? And do you have an experienced team with you to help out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sounds good. Mark, let me ask you a quick one. So with the certifications expansion, do you recommend that people belong to an association, maybe a business association that's associated with what they're doing?
Yeah, I highly encourage that. I've been a part of a lot of different organizations. I've actually chaired some and been the lead and president of a couple of associations. And it really helped me, build networkings with people that are within my industry. It helped to open up new resources for, whether it was products that we needed, services that we needed, vendor relationships. So those associations, I think, are really, really helpful and beneficial.
Mm.
And then beyond that, of course, there are the networking groups that might allow you to really expand what you're doing. And chambers, I'm very, very big on strong chambers within a city area. If you can get involved there and not just be a member, but also become active or become a sponsor, then you will certainly reap the benefits if you give it your all.
Excellent. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right, very good. So on to part two here, selling your products and services. So first and foremost, you think to yourself, we again often will get calls about new products, or I should say new businesses, but sometimes they're completely new products.
Hmm.
And what you have to think about if you're coming up with a new product development, you may not get on the Shark Tank, but you might have to think for yourself, is there going to be a demand for what you're asking for, or I'm sorry, for what you're manufacturing or wanting to sell? Okay. Is it a new concept? Because if it is, you may need to educate your consumer as much as you're going to need to promote your product or service. I will tell you also, back when I was in the wedding film industry, we had people calling us quite regularly, and they would say, yeah, we're thinking about a wedding movie, but not sure if we want to do it. Well, I had a twofold sales pitch at that point. Now I had to sell them first on why it was so important to have a wedding film. And then I had to convince them that what we were doing was, the best company to further their needs. So it became a double-edged sales pitch for me. So that's something to think about, as to whether or not you might be able to succeed in the marketplace. Is your product new? Does it require education? Do you have the ability to really inform the consumers as much as promote your product or service?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Next, try to understand the sales funnel. I think most of us know that sales funnel, where, at the top, we've got sort of that brand awareness, trying to get them all the way down to the sales. So if you've got a new product or a new company, then the first thing you've got to do is really create awareness. And that is extremely important for all startups, and really, honestly, for just about any business. I mean, we've been around for 24 years with Highway Media, and I still have to create awareness because there are companies that still don't know who we are. So there's different approaches to how to get in front of those folks. There's inbound marketing and outbound marketing. Inbound marketing is what we call direct response. That's when people are looking for your service or product right now, and they're online looking. They're typing a phrase or a search term, and they want to be able to find you. So are you there present when they are looking? The other side of the spectrum is the outbound. And that's when you want to make sure to create that brand awareness. So you're more at the top of the sales funnel, whereas the inbound is more at the bottom. But you still want to create that awareness so that if folks are looking for your product or service at that moment in time, it'll strike a chord in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to remember, too, that repetition is important. I've heard different numbers about how often somebody needs to see something, a message, but usually it's at least 7 times before they have that brand recognition. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So understand the best place for your product or offerings to be marketed. So consider, who's your target audience? Are they teenagers, 18 to 30-year-olds, 55 plus? So think about who your audience is and where are they looking or spending time as they're searching for your product, or maybe even just hanging out. I mean, let's face it. We've got folks that are, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that are still just hanging out online, maybe looking for your product or service. So think about where those folks might be and how you can get in front of them. Okay. And then finally here is, what are your competitors doing? Consider that. It doesn't mean you have to do identical to what they're doing, but consider what they're doing and then try to be different. I always suggest that. One thing that I did when I was in the wedding industry, and that's always correlated as I evolved in my years. But I've always said I never want to be like anybody else. And quite honestly, I never watched a wedding film from another company. I had no interest. I wanted it to be unique to what we were doing, but I wanted to understand how the marketplace worked. So I definitely made sure I understood price points, what certain companies were doing. I might watch a minute here or there of different things in different videos, but I didn't want to try to replicate. I didn't even want something to get into my mind to replicate it. So I created a unique thing, and I think that's why we were so successful. In fact, in the wedding industry, we were known nationally for our work. We flew all over the country. We even flew overseas for a couple of clients, and became highly recognized for that.
Great.
Yeah. All right. So moving on, what I always say is that in order to really gain new customers, you want to inspire, inform, and initiate them some kind of action. Okay. We've done that with video for, the last 15 years, producing content that people will look at, get inspired, inform them of what they're looking at or learning about, and then initiate them into some action, as I mentioned. So how is this done? Well, it's done in a number of ways, but you've got to make sure that it starts with most companies with a great website, and then also having great content that can help you advertise those things. And one thing I always say is remember that advertising is not an expense. It is an investment in your future. I think often they'll say, well, what's the cost or the expense? And I say, hey, just remember what we're trying to do here is help you grow. You want to be thinking about your ROI. Okay. And one thing I always tell companies is that when you look at your annual revenue, how much do you expect you might invest in growing that every year? Well, typically you might see a range from 6 to 12%. So if your revenue, your expected revenue for the year is just for an easy number's sake, $1 million, then you can expect your advertising to be in that range of 6 to 12% of that $1 million as an advertising budget. And that will help you grow, maintain, and develop new markets for your product or service. Okay. All right. So moving on here, utilizing social media and growing organic. So, we always tell people that if you're good at getting online, and let's face it, the older we get, the harder it seems to keep up with the young folks when it comes to marketing. But that's why we keep a great team of people that really understand the Gen Zs and the millennials, et cetera, because, we want to understand each generation and how they're responding to different things. But social media messaging is so important. If you go on to Facebook versus TikTok, the messaging and the advertising are going to be completely different. So you have to understand that, but you also want to try to utilize it to your benefit and grow organically as much as you can. Organic growth is really, really important because you don't want to have to spend every dollar to attract every single customer. Okay. Yeah. Yes, there is what we call a CPA, or cost per acquisition. We expect there are some dollars spent on every customer that comes in, but we also hope that organically people are going to start to come to know you and to love you. McDonald's has advertisements on TV every day, but do they really need to be there? Right? They don't always need to be there. They're there to help provide people with maybe new ideas, new foods that they're offering. But people know McDonald's, and the ones that love them, they're going to go there regardless. Okay. So it's just important, though, again, to understand where you're at and how you're messaging to folks.
Mark, if I could ask you, for some of our listeners, so how would you define the word organic?
Yeah. So organic is when you can develop, let's say, a natural following. So for example, if we're out there online and you're, let's say on Facebook, and you're advertising using dollars to be out there, and you see the sponsored links out there. So let's say you're selling, phone holders, and sponsored link, and you click on that. Well, every time that ad is shown, there's what they call impressions. Okay. So the company who's advertising that, they're paying for those impressions. But while that's happening, you should also be building up a following on your Facebook page and your other social media platforms. The fact that, hey, people should like me just because we got this great product. So you're doing social media posts, and you're showing ideas and maybe little videos or different things that relate to fun life with a phone. Well, people are watching that, they start to share it and they start to follow you. And the more followers you get, of course, the more beneficial that is to you. And those are what we call organic leads. Those are people that are coming to you organically without really having to pay. It's
okay.
Following. Okay. Great. All right. So moving on, video, as most of us recognize, has become the most powerful tool in marketing. That's really why we've had this natural evolution from being just a video and multimedia company into a full service digital agency, because we're finding that 90% of our digital marketing clients need video. And that's one of the key components. So the stats, I would say, if you get time, just go online. I mean, I could spend a half hour just talking about the statistics and how important they are at recognizing their benefit. But go online and Google, video statistics, for marketing, and you're going to be amazed at that. but it's super effective.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing we do when people call and say, hey, we'd like to do some marketing and have some videos produced, one thing we always recommend is the idea of building a library of footage so that through time, it's not just a matter of producing a single standalone video and hoping and expecting it will work. The idea is to build a library so that as we need footage, we can just grab it and then edit something new and quick, so that if there's a new promotion you have, a new concept that you want to advertise, we can do that quick and easy. And then finally, you want to make sure you're getting in front of the right audience on the proper channels. So for example, TikTokers, as we call them, those are folks that are generally in the mid-teens through maybe 30 years old. And TikTok is, if you haven't heard, it was the #1 search engine last year, or I should say not search engine, it was the #1 visited app in the entire platform of apps last
Wow.
year, more than Google search. So
Wow.
it's an amazing.
That's big.
Yeah. So we have found that a lot of our clients have been going in that route, and we're just seeing incredible results from being on TikTok. But it doesn't mean it's right for everybody, because if you've got a product or service that's really designated more for, let's say, the 40 or 50 plus market, they're not often on TikTok, so that may not be the place for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, and finally, utilize marketing experts to assist. It's a big job. I know a lot of small businesses, especially startups, they try to do things on their own. And by all means, whatever you can do and handle, go for it. Give it a shot. Try to do the social media posts. Make it a regular habit to maybe present something 3 times a week or 5 times a week. But make sure that you have some continuity to what you're doing, but not too much repetition. If you keep trying to just sell your business, people are going to just start to shy away. So, educate them, inspire them, give them some advice and tips on things that might be related to your product. So, for example, we work with Restoration One of Metro Detroit, and we might give tips on how to clean a house or for the winter, or how to prepare your furnace for the winter. And people love to read that, because it's tips that allow them to understand how to better improve their house, and it's also related a little bit to that industry as well.
So by doing that type of outreach, you're getting people to become more familiar with you as a trusted source, not just for your own product or service, but that you have other experts that you're recommending them to, or you're suggesting things to them that's going to make other parts of their life even better. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You nailed it, Tom. All right, great.
Yeah.
So the last part of this is managing the business.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't clarified this earlier, I've told people often that, small businesses fail, in my mind, for one of 3 reasons. Either A, you're not offering the right product, service, or you're not unique or good enough at what you're doing. And I'd rather say it more like, be an expert. As I mentioned, be an expert or have something unique to offer. Number 2, you have to be very good at selling or promoting your product or service, as we just discussed. And number 3, making sure that you understand the business side. How are you managing the business? Are you making profits based on what you're doing? If you just opened up let's say a dog training center, and you had no idea as to the cost involved to do certain things, or to open up a dog training facility and buy all the products and so forth, then how are you going to know how to price it? And that's just a simple example of what you need to do to understand that you're in business to make money, and you've got to understand that side of it. So first, I always tell companies, set goals for the business each year and long term. So I might be looking at 2022, 2023, and then through 25, and then maybe the next 5 years. Where do I want to be? What kind of growth pattern am I looking for? And what's realistic too? You don't want to be expecting that you can double your sales overnight, but have some realistic goals. Next, understand your profit margin so that you can establish proper pricing and ensure that you're still competitive. And I think that type of stuff is typically done in advance, but if you're at a point where you're rather new and you're trying to understand why you're struggling, financially, then it might be good to sit down with your bookkeeper or your accountant, or if it's yourself, and really look at line by line items of your cost, your revenues, and other factors that might be making an impact there. Okay. Next, understand your expenses and how that fits into pricing. I think just as I was starting to talk about, low priced offerings need to sell larger quantities. So if you're selling phone holders, I know I've brought that up a few times, you're going to probably want to try to sell, hundreds to thousands a day, depending on the scale of your company. And if you have a higher price offering, well, similar to like what we do here at Rockit Digital and at Highway Media, we're a higher ticket item. So we're not going to be doing 3, 4, 5 sales a day even. We're lucky and happy to take on a new customer every week, 2 customers a week, based on what we're doing. So it really just depends on your market. Don't be disappointed if you're only getting 5 leads a week, if you're hoping for 1 or 2 a week. Okay. Next, building strong vendor relationships. Understand who those vendors are, maybe where you can get your best pricing, but also the best quality product. You don't want to just be buying something at the cheapest price if it's not going to provide the quality that you're trying to represent to your customers. Okay. The last couple of things, look at your books every month, including, your reconciliation, your P&L, comp numbers from year to year. And of course, there's some other useful tools within programs like QuickBooks that will allow you to do comparative analysis month to month, year to year, et cetera. So don't just shut the door on that. Make sure you understand where your company is and where you want to be. And then finally, I would say hire a good accountant and stay in touch with them as needed. Nothing like having somebody who can, really help you understand that business side of things.
Makes excellent sense. Mark, so a question for you, and I like that last point about a good accountant. How valuable is a good accountant to a business? Because I know sometimes people start small business and they just try to do all these things themselves, and then they get into some trouble there. What are your thoughts on that?
My first year in business alone was 1997. And I think that was one of the first things I knew, is that there's no way I could consider having my own business without having an accountant that I could trust and rely on. It's different than a bookkeeper too. You might have one who can do both, or maybe it's a company that has bookkeeping and accounting available, but they are somewhat 2 different beasts in essence. But the bottom line is that I can't stress enough how important it is to have somebody who can truly help you look at, where you, let's say maybe you're just a startup, where you're at, the capital you've got, where you expect to be. You can analyze, pricing on buying products or expenses involved with services, and then your price structure. Is that going to help bring in the profit margin you need? Again, I'm giving a very elementary overview of this, but that's why you want to have somebody. I don't try to do anything on my own, right? The only thing we try to do in-house is video and digital marketing. Everything else, we get others involved as needed.
Yeah, so what you're saying is do what you're really good at and hire the experts to help you do what you need to do to make that business successful.
Amen to that.
Yeah, makes sense. Excellent. Well, Mark, any other thoughts or ideas for our listeners as we wrap this up?
Well, I think probably the most important thing for folks to remember is that, if you're new, there's a whole lot to understand and try to absorb. So talk to other small business owners. Again, join some chambers, get to know people in your area and your community, and look online for related industry programs that you might be able to get involved in. Those are going to be super beneficial. If you're not so new in business, maybe you've been around 3 or 4 years, but you're having a hard time making ends meet, maybe you could look at these 3 areas that we addressed today. It could be, your bookkeeping, and maybe the fact that you're going over on certain expenses every month and you didn't realize it. Maybe it's that you're not focusing your attention to, how you're marketing or getting online enough to your target audience. Or maybe you just got to figure out something new for your product line. Maybe people are looking for something different. Those are the 3 key areas we talked about today. And I would suggest that maybe you look at those 3 areas again, or one of the 3, and just make sure that you're focused on each of those 3 areas. Because again, my thoughts are small businesses will fail typically because they're failing in at least one of those 3 areas.
Excellent. Mark, if our listeners want to get a hold of you, maybe they would like to get more information on your services from Highway Media or Rocket Digital Marketing, or just maybe to ask you a question about business in general, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, if you want, just reach out. You can send an email at mark, M-A-R-K, at rocketdigital.net. And Rocket is R-O-C-K-I-T, digital.net. And of course, there's our phone number too. You'd be happy to take your calls and chat a little bit about your business model and what we might be able to do to help you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. We're going to have you back for another program here just because you have so much information, and I know our listeners could use all the help we can get. So with that said, I want to say thank you for being here today, and look forward to having you here next time.
Very good. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Have a blessed day.
You're welcome, Mark.